In at number 5 we have Skinwalkers. Rooted in indigenous folklore, Skinwalkers are creepy creatures that terrify anyone who dares to get near them. According to Navajo legend, a Skinwalker is a witch that is known for shapeshifting into any animal or living being in order to do harm. A Skinwalker can be described as animalistic with their physical intelligence and are impossible to capture. These creatures mimic sounds that might draw someone's attention, like a loved one or a stranger asking for help. They do this to lure their victims and gain their trust before ultimately bringing them to their own demise. The Skinwalker is a scary figure for indigenous people, and their presence is taken very seriously. Once the Skinwalker's true identity is revealed after capturing its victims, it is ultimately too late. This creature is so terrifying because our only understanding of them is to conquer our fear of them. What makes this even more frightening is the story of the Skinwalker Ranch. In 1996, a family of 4 moved into a cursed ranch. After just 18 months in their new home, they started to experience mysterious crop circles and mutilations of their cattle, and had sight of a mysterious large animal. This led the family to ultimately sell their ranch, but this didn't stop the sightings. Repeated cases of human-like creatures were documented at the ranch and surrounding area, leaving the case of the Skinwalker feeling even more real. In at number 4 we have sirens. Often mistaken as mermaids, sirens are mythical creatures with the head and upper body of a female human and the lower body of a fish. These evil creatures live in the sea and have sharp teeth. Sirens appear in folklore from around the world and are directly associated with shipwrecks. They directly appear in Greek's oldest work of literature, with them being described as bewitching singers. By the end of the Greek period, they had concluded that these women were no more than fables, yet the legend of the sirens lived on for centuries after the Greek civilization crumbled away. Sirens can be considered one of the scariest mythical creatures because they are known for their intense beauty and luring attraction. Though don't be fooled by the beauty of a siren, as they can use their physical appearance and enchanting songs to lead sailors to their demise. Sail too close to their neighboring island and you will quickly find out what makes them so scary. Before the sirens were known for their deadly singing and dangerous nature, they suffered greatly due to being cursed by Demeter and the Muses and exiled to a small island where they were forced to live a life of loneliness. Therefore, it is possible that the sirens turn on men to avenge the wrongs against them. With modern and ancient reports of siren-like creatures being spotted, there is no solid proof of these claims, so it's known that humans have only explored 5% of the Earth's oceans, leaving the siren mystery still plausible. Moving on to number 3, we have Chimera, which could be considered one of the most terrifying creatures in Greek mythology. The Chimera is a creature that came from Lucia, which was located in Asia Minor. Chimeras are described as having the head of a lion, a tail that looked like it belonged to a serpent, and the body of a goat, with the ability to breathe fire and known to be maybe invincible, with the strength of a lion, the cunning of a goat, and the venom of a snake. This might be one of the more bizarre creatures out there, but don't be mistaken, it's definitely not one to overlook. The Chimera was also seen as an omen of sorts, as he often appeared before natural disasters, mostly volcanic eruptions. Additionally, the Chimera had a terrible temper and no civilized instincts. She ransacked many villages, mostly killing cattle, but sometimes destroying houses and innocent people. The origin of the Chimera is known as the twisted offspring of a monstrous snake named Typhon and his half-human bride. The name Chimera is derived from a Greek word that translates to she-goat or monster, which is fitting for the creature. The most famous story of the Chimera is the tale of Bellerophon, who rode into battle against her on the back of the winged horse Pegasus. Bellerophon managed to drive a lance down the beast's throat right before it could burn him with a fireball, ultimately leading to the creature's end. In at number 2 we have the Wendigo. You may recognize the name, but do you know just how scary the Wendigos are? Well, Wendigos were known to be a man-eating monster that roamed the land near the Great Lakes. Physically, they can be described with pale skin, prominent ribs, and sunken eyes. They had the appearance of a malnourished man, though what makes the Wendigo so terrifying is that they never feel full after a meal, leaving them to attack anything and everything they come across for a quick meal. The legend of the Wendigo lurking in the forest is a scary thought, and knowing that they are cursed to wander the land, eternally seeking to fill the void of their appetite and infecting others, is even more terrifying. This creature belongs to the spiritual traditions of the the Algonquin-speaking indigenous in North America. According to legends, a human becomes a Wendigo after their spirit is tainted by greed or weakness by extreme conditions, and becomes possessed by a prowling spirit during the time of weakness. One could take away from the legend of the Wendigo from its beliefs, social structure, and traditions of three indigenous people telling these stories. The legend serves as a reminder of the importance of community, and what happens to an individual when they are left outside of the community. The story of the Wendigo highlights the importance of sharing and need for cooperation when it comes to surviving as a species. And finally, in at number 1, we have the Kraken. Known for its large size and roaming the ocean, the Kraken could be considered the largest and most dangerous creature in the sea. The monster can stretch out as far across as 10 warships side by side, and is considered the biggest monster in the sea, with giant tentacles that could pull a ship and its crew to their last breath. Even if it were to not attack you, the Kraken is so powerful by nature that the whirlpool it would create by diving below the water would be so massive, it could potentially sink a whole fleet underwater. Being such a big creature also brings a big appetite, where he will destroy any ship and marine life he comes across. Even though the Kraken is one of the laziest mythical creatures, with its size, it is rightly one of the most feared monsters. When facing a Kraken, you will notice bubbling in the water and scattering of marine life, as if everything in the ocean had to flee drastically, knowing something dangerous was coming. Any sailor who dares to want to survive their interaction with a Kraken must get as far away as possible, if it's not too late. In the 18th century, the Norwegian bishop Erik Pontoppidan insisted that the Kraken was real, and had stated to have recalled seeing it on multiple occasions. Pontoppidan described the creature as the largest and most surprising of all the animal creations. The fisherman also stated that it has a strong and peculiar scent, which it can emit at certain times, and by means of which it beguiles and draws other fish to come in heaps with it. There is a documentation of this scary monster ruling the seas since the 13th century. The Kraken ranks top among mythical creatures for centuries for its sheer strength and size. This creature can be considered the largest monster ever imagined by mankind. While there has not been any proof of the Kraken to exist, the ocean holds many real creatures similar, such as giant squids being documented and discovered by scientists, which can grow to be 600 pounds.
Number 5 on this list is El Chupacabra. You guys should know who El Chupacabra is by this point, considering we've talked about this creature tons on this channel before. Basically, it is a legendary creature in the Central Americas that's said to drink the blood of livestock. Although this creature seems like it's probably fake, it might be real, just not exactly how we might expect it to be. Carolyn Beccia says, "We are taught from an early age, don't approach scary looking dogs. And while no one can get a clear picture of Bigfoot, the Kraken, or the Loch Ness Monster, there is one monster that is oddly not camera shy, the legendary El Chupacabra. The Chupacabra was first sighted in Puerto Rico in the 70s. A wave of sightings followed in the late 1990s. During this time, livestock throughout Puerto Rico was found drained of blood. These Chupacabra, or goat sucker attacks, caused panic with local residents who claimed a vampire was feeding on their livestock. Although descriptions have varied, most describe a hairless, alien-like monster with spikes going down its back and glowing red eyes. It sounds dubious, but how could so many people be taking pictures of the same ugly dog-like creature? The answer may be one found in science. One plausible theory is that these creatures are coyotes suffering from sarcoptic mange, an inflammatory skin condition caused by the itch-inducing parasite mite scabies. Wolves, dogs, and coyotes infected with scabies will have extreme hair loss, skin shriveling, and constricted blood vessels that can lead to life-threatening fatigue. And while usually a coyote or wolf will have no problems hunting prey, once infected by sarcoptic mange, coyotes may choose to hunt more available meals such as livestock. So it's actually possible that this creature is real, it's just not what we thought at all. I know that this takes away from some of the mystery and lore around it, but ultimately this would make a lot of sense. When you think about it, what's more likely? A space alien comes crashing to Earth and starts sucking the blood of our livestock, or some coyotes get a disease and start doing it instead? I tend to side with the coyotes. Either way though, that doesn't make these coyotes nice or friendly or approachable. Still treat them like you would a chupacabra. with caution. Number 4 on this list is the Stymphalian Birds. We gotta go all the way back to ancient Greece for this one. Caroline Beccia says, one of Hercules' labors was to kill the Stymphalian birds, man-eating birds who had the peculiar habit of throwing dung. The Greeks were not the only ones who liked to scare their youngsters with killer bird tales. The Maori tribe of New Zealand told similar legends of the Pokie or Haikoi, a giant black and white bird that swooped down from the sky to pick off small children. Scientists today know that these thunderbirds existed. Called Haast's eagle, the bird stood over 6 feet tall and had a wingspan of over 8 feet. The Haast eagle would sit atop trees and then ambush its prey by swooping down at 60-mile-per-hour speeds. Then it would disembowel its meal with sharp talons before the poor slob could even worry about dung throwing. Hercules would never have survived to these hellbirds, but you can sleep well tonight. The Haast's eagle went extinct around the 15th century. Anything that could annihilate Hercules would definitely be a no-go for me, guys. That dude was literally a demigod, and if these guys could have beaten him, then we wouldn't have stood a chance. Lucky for us, they are extinct now, but for the people back then, they would have had their hands full with these creatures. If, of course, they still had hands and the beast hadn't ripped them off yet. Number 2 on this list is the Charybdis. What was initially thought to be a folkloric creature may have been real, but not exactly in the way that we might think. Caroline Beccia says, nothing is more frightening than being sucked underwater by a whirlpool that feeds on human flesh 3 times a day. The Charybdis first appeared in Homer's Odyssey. During this epic tale, Odysseus must sail between the 6-headed sea monster Scylla and the flesh-eating whirlpool Charybdis. These 2 dueling sea monsters attacked in intervals much like a whirlpool's regular intervals of tidal activity. It sounds terrifying, but whirlpools that pull ships underwater really do happen. Known today as Garofalo, one is found in the strait between Italy's mainland and Sicily. Garofalo occurs when winds blow across the strait in opposition to the tides. This makes it technically not a whirlpool because there's no circular motion, but it does have the ability to wreak havoc on ships and pull humans into a watery grave. So this deadly creature was real, it just ended up not being a creature at all. Back in the times when these stories were written, there would have been many folklore legends about evil sea monsters that could pull brave sailors into the sea. The reality of the situation is, though, that the ships we had back then kinda sucked, and it was a lot easier for the weather and other conditions to sink the ships. That's why there were so many legends of monsters coming from the ocean for so long. Finally, number 1 on this list is the Incubus demon. This demon is an evil demon who is thought to sneak into your home and have sexual relations with you as you're sleeping. This creature is real in a sense. It just so happens that it's actually in our minds. During the witch hunt craze of the 16th and 17th century, people had some really messed up ideas on how human reproduction occurred. One way was for a demon to steal a man's seed and impregnate a helpless woman during her sleep. The monster that stole the precious sperm was called a succubus, and the monster that implanted the sperm was called an incubus. The incubus would sit on top of your chest while you slept, making it impossible for you to move if you woke. Sort of like being assaulted by a possessed sexomniac. But before you condemn medieval people as crazed horn dogs trying to attack innocent women, there is a scientific basis for believing in such monsters. The condition is called sleep paralysis. During sleep paralysis, you are fully awake but cannot move or cry for help. It feels like you've had a stroke, but although it's terrifying, sleep paralysis is harmless. Most sleep experts attribute it to being caught between REM, rapid eye movement, and NREM, non-rapid eye movement sleep. Either way, before sleep stages were understood, we can see how our ancestors would have thought it was a demon sitting on your chest. So literally, this demon creature that apparently attacked people was never real at all. It just felt extremely real from our minds. I've experienced sleep paralysis before, and although I didn't experience any demon thing, I can 100% see how people would have believed this back then. It could definitely have felt like that and would have got people on the lookout for this sick and twisted demon of the night. Number 5 on this this list is the Comanche's speed. Apparently these warriors could move faster than anyone, and this lightning quick speed struck fear into any of those who battled them. Ranker says the Comanche tribe dwelled throughout the American Southwest from as early as the 1500s and are believed to be the first of the Plains Indians to have horses. They learned to use them with great effect. According to Mexican General Manuel de Mirateran, who faced their vicious onslaughts. Their mode of attack is generally by arranging the lances in front, the guns in the center, and bows in the rear. Their horses at full speed, accompanied with the fury and yellings of demons, they were among the bravest and most warlike of the Mexican tribes. These extremely fast attacks seemed to defy all physics and left their opponents stunned and usually too wounded to do anything but surrender. No one knows how they were so fast or if there was something supernatural about them. Most likely they were just well-trained warriors who acted swiftly, and the legend has snowballed over the years to represent these lightning-quick fighters. Whatever the case, it apparently didn't matter how fast you were or how fast your horse was. You were no match for the Comanche. Number 4 on this list is the Berserkers. I talked about these ancient warriors in a recent video where we looked at warriors that you wouldn't want to fight. We need to bring them up again though, because there's actually a crazy urban legend surrounding them, which is part of the reason why you'd never want to fight them. Wired says the legendary Viking warriors known as Berserkers were renowned for their ferocity in battle, purportedly fighting in a trance-like state of blind rage, howling like wild animals, biting their shields, and often unable to distinguish between friend and foe in the heat of battle. But historians know very little about the Berserkers apart from scattered old Norse myths and epic sagas. Accounts of the Berserkers date back to a late 9th century poem to honor King Harald Fairhair. The 13th century Icelandic historian/poet Snorri Sturluson described Odin's Berserkers as being mad as dogs or wolves and strong as bears or wild oxen, killing people with a single blow. Specific attributes can vary widely among the accounts, often veering into magic or mysticism. There are claims that Berserkers were not affected by edged weapons or fire, but they could be killed with clubs. Other claims say they could blunt the blades of their enemies with spells or just by giving them the evil eye. Most accounts at least agree on the primary defining characteristic: a blind, ferocious rage. The legends surrounding these warriors became so well known and scattered throughout Europe that no one knew what to believe anymore. It was widely thought that these people would actually turn into wolves and beasts when they entered battle, like werewolves almost, becoming incredibly fast and strong and impossible to take down in a fight. Whether this is actually true or not is still unknown. I guess that's what makes it a good urban legend, but still, an urban legend that you probably would never want to see face to face. Number 3 on this list are the Aztecs. The Aztecs were particularly fearsome warriors who did whatever they had to get the win, even if that meant sacrificing their loved ones to gain the power of the gods. Ranker says, the gods of the Aztecs never ceased to thirst, and because the gods relied on bloodletting for nourishment, the Aztecs thrived in a state of constant warfare with intent to sacrifice. Children began training as early as the age of 5 and earned warrior status upon capturing their first sacrificial victim. They then used clubs, bows, spears, and darts to disable captives, skin and dismember them before their hearts were finally gouged out. Aztec warriors were spiritually motivated, thus their discipline and ferocity are often credited as the forces that long ensured their victory. It's believed that these warriors had a strong relationship with their god, and it was this relationship and the sacrifices that they made that allowed them to conquer as much as they did. Godlike powers would flow through them and they were almost unstoppable. They were stronger, faster, and smarter than any other warrior when they were in this state, and they were almost impossible to kill. However, with this great power comes its drawbacks. They were also much crueler in that heightened state as well. A Spanish conquistador who battled the Aztecs and somehow managed to escape with his life life roach, anyone facing them for the first time can be terrified by their screams and their ferocity. In warfare, they are the most cruel people to be found, for they spare neither brothers, relatives, friends, nor women. Even if they are beautiful, they kill them all and eat them. Yeah. The Aztecs weren't above eating people either, and they would do that from time to time. Maybe this was their animalistic godlike instincts taking over, I don't really know, but it is believed to have happened. You wouldn't have wanted to face the Aztecs ever, but you especially wouldn't have wanted to face them after a sacrifice, because it would have been like facing off against a god. Number 2 on this list is the Scythians Fainting. This next entry details a very specific tactic that it's believed the Scythians used in combat. The tactic would apparently drain the opponent of sanity and may have included them becoming invisible. Ranker says the Scythians were renowned for the strength of their cavalry, but to their opponents, the Romans, Greeks, and Persians, the Scythians were also a deceitful lot. Rather than prancing straight into the fire, the Scythians found success with a tactic called fainting. With this tactic, they would retreat from the front lines, causing their enemies to just relax enough for the Scythians to return with a surprise ambush of archers on horseback. They were regarded as invisible menaces who starved enemies by scorching their land before proceeding with attacks during mealtime and sleeping hours. Those opposing them could neither sleep, eat, nor defend themselves with clarity of mind. Rather than riches, the Scythians cherished their ability to roam and kept few belongings so that their getaways were swift and their enemies reaped no rewards. It got to the point where any shadow that flew past or any sound of any kind would set off their opponents into a frenzy, thinking that it was the Scythians. They were able to get in their head, and rumors started spreading that they could be invisible. It was also believed that anyone who fought, their mental state would deteriorate quickly afterwards. This is probably all exaggerated through word of mouth, but I can understand how this could have been believed. If you constantly had to be on guard at all times with no idea where your enemy was and how they could strike, that would cause your brain to start messing up a bit too. And finally, number 1 on this list is the Maori Warrior ancestors. These ancient warriors utilized the power of their ancestors in battle and would grow extremely strong when they did this. Worshipping these ancestors, though, was done in a bit of a strange manner. Ranker says in 1642 the Dutch East India Company anchored its ships off the shores of New Zealand with sights set on inhabiting the mysterious island. The Maori, carved head to toe with tattoos, appeared the following day, prepared for battle. The Maori's main strategy was to ambush the enemy during the nighttime. In victorious celebration, they dismembered and supposedly ate their enemy's body parts, theoretically as a form of revenge originating from mythology. The Maori believed they were consuming their victims' spirits and nourishing those of their ancestors. So apparently these people believed that and eating their enemies would make them grow stronger in battle. Their ancestors would feast, and as they fed those spirits, they would grow stronger for their next fight. I highly doubt that this actually worked, but apparently they were pretty fearsome warriors, so people started to wonder if there was some truth to this tactic. I'm not really sure why their ancestors couldn't have just been happy with a really nice cooked steak, but I guess that's why I'm not a Maori warrior.